Examine the pattern of distribution of religious minorities in India. Pattern of distribution of religious minorities in India. Now, we find that there are a number of religious or religions which are minorities religion. Major minority religion in India is Islam. If you talk about, another one is Christianity. Another one, if you talk about, is Buddhism. Another one is Jainism. Another one is Sikhism. These are the most important minority religions of India. Now, if we talk about the pattern of their distribution, we'll be starting historically. First, this kind of religious diversity in India is a result of two factors. One important factor is the phenomena of presence of cultural hearth. So we know that there is presence of the Indo-Gangetic hearth, cultural hearth or religious hearth, which is present in India. Beside, if you talk about second important way in which such religions have come, it is the case of the phenomena of migration, diffusion, plus missionary diffusion. Missionary diffusion, which was later also supplemented by hierarchical. That means it is a result of diffusion process. Hierarchical diffusion. So it is result of, essentially I can say, it is a result of what? Cultural diffusion. Cultural diffusion. So there are two main causes due to which this is found. So if we start with first Buddhism. Buddhism. So Buddhism, very importantly, it originated from where? It originated from the eastern core of the Indo-Gangetic hearth. From the eastern core of the Indo-Gangetic hearth. Indo-Gangetic hearth. That means the region of Magad, that was the area from where it has its origin. Now, very importantly, this religion originated as a reform movement. Reform movement within Hinduism. As a part of Hinduism, it originated as a reform movement. From the preachings of one person, that was Siddhartha. It originated from the preachings of Siddhartha. And essentially, very important feature of this religion is what? It is a monotheistic religion, which believes in single God. Okay, so actually it was a kind of reform movement within Hinduism, because Hinduism by the later Vedic period had become too much corrupt, too much orthodox, so much difficult practices which were there, so much costly practices. So it was just a kind of reform movement. Now, very important thing, particularly after the death of Buddha, the religion spread very, very fast. So the main modes which were adopted for the spread of the religion were twofold. It started, the diffusion of it of this religion started with the missionary diffusion process. Missionary diffusion, where it was the Buddhist monks who went to several places and spread the message of Buddha and Buddhism. Very important mode which was followed here was that these Buddhist monks, what they tried to do, they tried to convert the leader of the societies and clans to this faith. And ultimately their main aim was what? To ensure that there is also hierarchical diffusion. Hierarchical diffusion process occurred. So they combined both of them, missionary diffusion and hierarchical diffusion. As a result of this combination, what we find, the spread of Buddhism was very fast. Spread of Buddhism was very fast. You must be aware that during this period, two actually religions originated, Buddhism and Jainism. Buddhism was more successful than Jainism because Buddhism was associated with more pro-people practices, which were more easier for the common people. Jainism was associated with very rigid practices. So it was able to spread itself very, very fast. So what happened? We are simply saying that it originated from this core, and after originating from this core, it followed the same paths through which it spread in India. Even South India, you will find so many Buddhist stupas and architecture to be present. Not only in India, it also spread to Southeast Asia, other places like Sri Lanka, and even towards China, Tibet. Several places it ultimately spread to. Same process, the missionary diffusion followed by the hierarchical diffusion. Okay? And as a result, the spread was very, very fast. Now what we find here, this success was seen as a threat by the major religion, which was Hinduism. Thus ultimately what happened, Buddhism became victim of its own success. It became victim of its own success. It was attacked by the major religion, which was Hinduism. Result was that in India, which was the birthplace of Buddhism, it ultimately vanished. It mainly vanished from the birthplace itself. So you'll find many people would tell you that during the medieval period, it was the Islamic rulers who came and they destroyed lots of architecture associated with Buddhism, etc., etc. The reality is both of them did. Hindus as well as the Muslim rulers. Both of them did. Number of reasons were there. For religion purpose, it was done by mostly Hindu rulers, from the perspective of wiping out the religion. Now, it is a common practice, it was actually a common practice in the past periods to destroy religious institutions. Because religious institutions used to be the symbol of authority, symbol of superiority. Lots of faith of people was associated with these religious institutions. So in the past, when the rulers attacked new areas, They tend to destroy what? These religious institutions, that so that the moral faith of the people becomes lower. And it doesn't mean that they were trying to destroy the religion. It was a way of capturing the new areas. Okay? If we have to find out someone who purposefully tried to destroy the religion, it was actually Hinduism and the Hindu rulers, who were guided by the advice of, very famous Brahmins. Okay. So if you talk about it, ultimately happened what? It vanished from the India. That means if we talk about present Buddhism in India, this present Buddhism is not the original Buddhist which evolved in India. This present Buddhism is a result of two things. One, this Buddhism has actually arrived from Tibet and China. So from Tibet and China, this Buddhism has arrived as through the process of migration diffusion. Migration diffusion. So it is associated with which racial stock? Mongoloid racial stock. Mongoloid racial stock. More specifically, the Tibeto-Mongoloids racial stock. So that is one. This is one type of Buddhism which is found in India. There is second type of Buddhists which are found also in India. These are mostly the lower caste Hindus who have converted to Buddhism because of the ill treatment that they received in Hinduism. Here, the hearth from where this movement originated, this hearth was Nagpur. Nagpur Wardha region, from where the Ambedkar movement started. Okay? So here, through this movement, number of low caste Hindus converted to Buddhism. As a result of which you will be finding that as the distance decays, such type of Buddhist numbers would be reducing. So another area of concentration of Buddhism population is what? One is these Himalayan belts, we'll see a bit. And the second one is the Maharashtra region, particularly the Vidarbha and Marathwada are the areas where you'll be finding concentration of Buddhist population to be present. So if we look into the areas which are there of Buddhism, there were some areas where percentage concentration was very high. Like for example, where their percentage was above 50%. Above 50%. Two important districts were Tawang, Arunachal Pradesh, and North Sikkim, where their concentration was high. Then there were areas where again it was higher, 40 to 50%. Number of areas were there. One was Lahul, Spiti, and West Kaming. Other, if you talk about where 20 to 40% concentration was seen, it was rest of Sikkim and Kinnaur of Himachal. So rest of Sikkim, that means east, south and west Sikkim, and Kinnaur was another area. Then there was areas where the concentration was between 10 to 20%. So in this group now, there were areas like the Lohit district of Arunachal Pradesh. There was other areas like Darjeeling, South Tripura, and another area. Now comes the area of Maharashtra. So number of areas of Maharashtra like Akola, Nanded, Wardha, Nagpur, Chandrapur, Chandrapur. ठीक है? So again, it is again area associated with the Ambedkar movement. So here it was 10 to 20%. Then there were some areas where the concentration was between 5 to 10%. And if you talk about here, some of the areas included the, अगर north में देखें तो it was Dibang Valley and North Tripura. Maharashtra में देखें तो number of areas, that is Ratnagiri, Satara, Aurangabad, Yavatmal, etc. So there were a number of areas where it was, their concentration was found to be between 5 to 10%. Significant percentage of Buddhists were found in the population. Okay? So if you talk about, this is basically the case of Buddhism distribution. One thing is very clear, Buddhism is distributed in two areas, the border area of Himalayas and the Maharashtra region. Then comes another religion, which was Jainism. Jainism has parallel evolution with Buddhism. It has almost parallel evolution with Buddhism. So it also originated from where? The eastern core of the Indo-Gangetic earth. It also originated as a reform movement within Hinduism. It also originated from the preachings of one person, Mahavir. And again, it was associated with, it was also a monotheistic religion. But what was the difference in Jainism? As we said, it was characterized by strict practices. It was characterized by very strict practices. And this aspect of characterized by strict practices, like for example, even if you kill an ant, ultimately what will happen? You will have to do penance for that. It is like this. And you can understand, you don't eat onions and so many things which are basically what? Having tamas, food, which produce lots of tamas in your body. So again, many of the things which was not used to the common people. It was difficult for the common people like me to follow. मेरे को प्याज नहीं दोगे तो फिर खाया ही क्या है? So tamas is something on which I survive. Okay. So strict practices, as a result of which it was less popular. And it mainly spread in India through contagious diffusion process. हमने देखा है, contagious diffusion is the slow, very very slow process. So it mainly spread through the phenomena of contagious diffusion in India. And contagious diffusion, it is mainly associated with the trading class. With the trading class of India. Okay? So if it is associated with the trading class of India, we'll see that the concentration of Jainism is mainly where? In the cities. Its concentration is mostly found in the cities. Whatever be the case, this less popularity of Jainism became the cause of its continuity. Because again, it was not seen as a threat by Hinduism. As a result, the Jainism has continued history in India, unlike the broken history of Buddhism. Okay? So that is how Jainism has evolved in India. We find that around 60% of the followers of Jainism are concentrated in Rajasthan, Gujarat, and Maharashtra. Others are concentrated mostly in Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh, UP and MP. Now, if we look into, one thing is very clear, the concentration of Jain population is nowhere very high. Like we saw that in case of Buddhism, there were certain districts where it was over 50%. Here we find that it is not, nowhere in India it is very high. So the districts where it is above 10%. Districts where it is above 10%. Only 2 districts were present, and both of them, if you talk about, were in Rajasthan. One was Barmer and Jalore. Then if you talk about 5 to 10%, number of areas were there. For example, Uttar Pradesh, there was Lalitpur. There were other areas, like for example in Rajasthan, lots of areas, Udaipur, Banswara, Chittorgarh, Sirohi. If you talk about in Gujarat, it is Sundarnagar. Then if you talk about in Madhya Pradesh there were number of areas like Sagar, Ratlam, Mandsaur, Gwalior. These were the, basically these places actually are ancient cities of India where they are located. Then there are areas where their concentration is below 5%. Below 5%. So number of areas, Gujarat, if you talk about, it is Bhavnagar and Kutch. Bhavnagar and Kutch of Gujarat. Then if you talk about in Rajasthan, it is found in Bikaner, Bhilwara and Bundi. If you talk about MP, Madhya Pradesh, Ujjain, Jabalpur, Indore, UP, Firozabad, Maharashtra, Mumbai, Kolhapur, Satara. Kolhapur and Satara. So these are the areas where you will again find that they are concentrated. So again you can see there are many areas which are border areas like Rajasthan, which were the trading spots from which it was the trading was being done with the other regions. Then if you talk about another important religion which later arrived in India was Christianity. So Christianity actually arrived in India in 345 AD, and it arrived in India through missionary diffusion. There was a missionary saint, and it is Saint Thomas Church, who arrived on the Malabar coast. Malabar coast of India. But what happened? This religion, for very long period, for centuries, it remained confined. Remained confined on the Malabar coast. In rest of India, it spread only after when? Only after the Europeans arrived in India. Only after the arrival of European colonial rulers. So with the arrival of European colonial rulers, it also got the hierarchical diffusion support. Hierarchical diffusion support it got, and as a result it spread into India. Okay? You know very well it was after in the modern period it has mostly spread. Now, if you talk about this religion, by the modern period, religions were very clearly established in the regions. There was only few areas which were still to be affected by the religion, major religions. Like for example, for this time period, when this process started of Europeans, we find that the tribal belts of India were not part of Hinduism. They were simply outliers out of the Hinduism. So the missionary diffusion which occurred of this Christianity with the support of hierarchical diffusion, it occurred in these tribal belts of India. So main tribal belts which were targeted, one important was the northeastern tribal belt, where its impact has been most pronounced. Another important belt if you talk about is the central tribal belt, where the impact has become more pronounced. Okay? Like for example, Jharkhand is one area where you'll find, Odisha is one area where some impact of Christianity can be seen. Okay? You will find that one of the things you'll find that RSS, for example, you take, which are the areas where RSS is very, very active and like they're flooding in more and more money. It is these tribal belts. You can see that northeast में तो उन्होंने सीधे government खरीद ही ली. It was like this. They simply bought the governments because it is one area where they have been fighting with Christianity for a long period. Before they were not concerned because nobody was carrying them. But once Christianity began to make penetration, then they realized, अरे ये भी तो हिंदू हैं. And again the process of things started. It has benefited in a way tribals, no doubt about that, because various welfare works have reached because of the competition which has been there. So again, these are the main areas where Christianity has spread. So if you look into the spread of Christianity, there are a number of type of areas where the Christianity has spread. So if you talk about the type of areas where the Christianity has spread, one type of area is the historical region of Christianity, and it is essentially the Malabar coast. As we said, on the Malabar coast, it essentially arrived first in the form of what? In the form of migration diffusion. So Malabar coast mein there are a number of areas, like for example some of the concentration district where there was over 40% of population of Christians was found, like Ernakulam, Kottayam, were the districts where the population was above this. It has also along the Malabar coast, from this Malabar coast it has spread to other areas like for example Kanyakumari. Here the concentration was between 10 to 20%. So one type of area where it has spread is this area. One type of area where it has spread through, यहाँ पर Malabar coast पर it was through the missionary plus contagious diffusion. Second type of area is the colonies. And in these colonies there was what? There was hierarchical diffusion process was the main way through which it has spread. And you can understand there were a number of colonies, like for example Goa. You can understand the difference between British and the Portuguese and French was that British were more intelligent in the sense that they didn't interfere with the culture of the locals. Their main aims were mostly they were guided by economic motives. On the other hand, if you talk about Portuguese and French, they were very much concerned with the changing of the culture, people developing the same faith. Okay? So if you talk about Goa is one area where there is higher concentration to be found. So in Goa, both South and North Goa, the concentration was above 40%. Both in North and South Goa. Similarly, other areas where it has spread is Puducherry is another area. So colonies type, this was another type of area. Then third type of area where this has spread is the tribal belt. The tribal belt of India. And here the main mode of diffusion has been missionary diffusion with support of hierarchical. Hierarchical diffusion was in the form of resources and protection which was offered to them, offered to the missionaries in this area. So in this tribal belt, you will be finding that number of areas. One important area which has been very much affected is the northeastern India. And if you talk about in the northeastern India, there were about 11 districts. 11 districts mostly spread in Mizoram and Nagaland. Mizoram and Nagaland, where the concentration was above 90%. Concentration was above 90%. While there were more than 20 districts which were spread in Manipur, Meghalaya, Nagaland, Mizoram, where it was concentration was above 50%. Above 50%. Okay? So again, this is the most important belt of Christianity in case of India. So this is another area, tribal belt. Then another important area is the central Indian tribal belt. And here, although the concentration is low, like for example, you take the case of Jharkhand. Here in Jharkhand, highest concentration was of about 10% was found in the Bamla region of Jharkhand. Bamla region of Jharkhand. Then if you talk about like Odisha, here highest concentration of about 5% was found in Sundargarh district of Odisha. So this is another area where you will be finding that penetration of Christianity has taken place. And last type of area where Christianity is having some concentration is the refuge zones. Refuge zones. So if you talk about this refuge zones of Christianity. When Christianity was making retreat from India, there was certain border areas where it got concentrated. For example, if you look into the Gurdaspur of Punjab, here the concentration is around 5% of the total population. Okay? So again, it is what Christianity found a refuge zone where it got concentrated. So this is how the Christianity is spread in case of India. Then comes the Islam. The mode of Christianity and Islam has been very similar. Islam also arrived in India in 7th century. It arrived later in India, first on the Malabar coast. As how? Mainly through missionary diffusion, Sufi saints. Missionary diffusion process. But very clearly, after this period, it got support from the Islamic sultanates which established in India, thereby causing the phenomena of hierarchical diffusion. And as a result, what has happened? Islam has established in case of India. So two modes which have been followed: missionary diffusion, the Sufi saints, and the hierarchical diffusion process has been followed in case of India, the main modes. That is why it was able to spread fast in India. Now, very importantly, the impact of hierarchical diffusion can be seen from the fact that the centers of these sultanates were the areas where you will be finding maximum concentration of Muslim population is found. Okay? So, for example, you will find that as you move away from main center, Mughal Sultanate, it was Delhi. So as you move away from Delhi, what happens? The population of concentration of Muslim, it is declining. But this is basically this is one aspect. What has actually happened in the later Mughal period, there was presence of later Mughals, they became very weak. And thus there was rise of the era of Nawabs, who established their kingdoms in number of places, their provinces in number of places. So what we find, actually the situation is something like this. As you move away from Delhi, concentration declines but again rises. It is like this. So there was Awadh, there was other areas like Murshidabad. Murshid Quli Khan established the center there. There was Hyderabad. Okay? So as you move away from Delhi, generally what happens with the concentration decline. इसमें एक change कर सकते हो, इस diagram में 1 minute, इसको थोड़ा और नीचे कर दो. Because the intermediate areas are what? It becomes very low. But again it rises in those headquarters, which were the headquarters areas. So you can give examples. Here it was Delhi, Awadh, Murshidabad, Hyderabad. So this is how the concentration of the Muslim population is seen in India. So that is one way in which the areas are concentrated. There is also a third type of zone. एक zone हमने देखा Malabar coast, where it actually arrived and slowly spread over a period of time. Second area was where the support of hierarchy led to people convert to Islam. Majority of Muslims which are found in India, they are actually Hindus who ultimately got converted to Islam. Okay? That is true. So again, it was result of what? It was result of the hierarchical diffusion process, because there were number of advantages in many of the periods, many of the rulers' period. So again, what happens? That is one thing. But there is another third type of region, and this third type of region is when the Islam was retreating from India, it again found certain refuge zones where the religions were not so much established. And if you talk about two important refuge zones, one was definitely the Kashmir Valley, and second was Western Rajasthan. Two important areas where you will be finding the concentration of Islam is to be found. So if we look into the Islam, we are saying that Islam has three main type of areas. One, the area of historical arrival. The area of historical arrival, and clearly it is what? It is the Malabar coast. Malabar coast. And along Malabar coast, number of areas are there, like for example, where the concentration was above 50%. Kozhikode, Kannur, Palakkad, Palakkad. There were areas where the concentration was between 20 to 40%. If you talk about, these are Trivandrum, Ernakulam. These were certain areas, other areas where it is located. Then the areas where it spread as a result of hierarchical diffusion. So what we are saying here is something like this. One area where concentration is this Malabar coast. But another area where it spread as a result of hierarchical diffusion was this Indo-Gangetic belt. Another area where you will be finding it has spread is this Deccan belt, which includes the Mysore and all those areas which are part and parcel of this. Then another area which you will be finding is the Kashmir Valley region. Another area is this dry region of Rajasthan. ठीक है, so हमने मालाबार की बात कर ली. In Malabar it is spread. Then if you talk about other areas is the Indo-Gangetic belt. Indo-Gangetic belt. So in the Indo-Gangetic belt, it has spread from Delhi to West Bengal, where very high concentration was seen in areas like Murshidabad, very high concentration, above 50%. Malda, in Uttar Pradesh, places like Muradabad, Rampur, Saharanpur, Muzaffarnagar, Meerut, Lucknow. So there was high concentration of Muslim population in all of these major districts. Then others like, for example, Brahmaputra Barak Valley. Brahmaputra Barak Valley also it is there. Like for example, concentration was found to be high in some of the districts like Kamrup, Naugaon, Goalpara, then if you talk about Deccan region, another where it spread as a result of the hierarchical diffusion was the Deccan belt. So in Deccan belt, number of places are there, Like for example, one important area of Madhya Pradesh, Malwa region. It has spread in Maharashtra. It has been in Marathwada region. So, for example, if you talk about number of places like Ujjain is one of the areas where it has spread. In Marathwada region, places like Aurangabad, Akola, where there is high concentration. If you talk about other areas like, if you talk about Karnataka, it is found number of places like Bellari, Raichur, Gulbarga, Mysore. Then Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, number of areas like Kurnool, Nizamabad, Kudappa, Hyderabad. So several places it was found to be, the concentration was found to be higher. Then, so this is one type of area. Then third type of area are the refuge zones. Refuge zones. So when it was retreating, ultimately it found certain areas where the impact of other religions was less. So the refuge zones are twofold. One is the dry region of Rajasthan and Gujarat. Dry region of Rajasthan and Gujarat. And here Jaisalmer, Barmer and Kutch. Here it is 10 to 20% of concentration is found. Similarly, if you talk about other important area is the Kashmir Valley. Other important area is the Kashmir Valley where it is found. So particularly the upper Jhelum and Chenab valleys. In the upper Jhelum and Chenab valleys, the concentration is above 90%. Upper Jhelum and Chenab valleys. Other places in Jammu and Kashmir where the concentration is found to be higher, Poonch, Ladakh, Udhampur. Here also concentration is found to be higher. Okay? So there are a number of areas where we find that Islam is more established. So three type of areas of establishment of Islam. Okay. Then finally our other important is Sikhism. And if you talk about Sikhism, very important thing about Sikhism is Sikhism originated from the western core of the Indo-Gangetic Earth. Western core of the Indo-Gangetic Earth. It also originated as a reform movement within Hinduism. And it is based upon what? Teachings of several gurus, Sikhism gurus, not one but many. So, it originated as a reform movement. Now, it is also monotheistic. Religion always evolves in this manner. Initially, you will be finding religions would be polytheistic. There would be many gods. And ultimately, later on, as religion reforms, what will happen? It would give rise to single God concept. Okay? Like for example, you see the Greek cultures. There were basically what? There was so many gods. Like we find in case of India. Later on, there was evolution of the Jews, and later further reform happened, and there was evolution of the Christians. So both of them were basically what? Based on monotheistic religions they were. India, maybe there was evolution of monotheism, In fact, you must have heard about Advaita, philosophy of Advaita. So there is also a concept in India, but Hinduism में आगे पीछे होता रहता है. We move forward, then we go backward, because suddenly the religion rises and the religious representatives rise. Like again, they are trying to take back. These days, you can see we are trying to move backwards. Okay. So if you talk about, this is how it has evolved. Now, very importantly, we find that the main concentration of Sikhism is found in Punjab and neighboring Haryana. Punjab and neighboring Haryana. There are two main reasons. One, it has originated from here. अभी हमने देखा western core, it has originated from Punjab. One. Second, the main process of diffusion which has been followed, it has grown mainly through contagious diffusion in this area. Always we find that contagious diffusion is what? It is a slow process. Third important factor is that it is the youngest main religion of India. It is new, more recently evolved. Thus, its diffusion has been what? It has been limited. Okay? So, high concentration is found where? In this area. But very important aspect of Sikhism is, it is one of the religion which is distributed in all districts of India. All districts of India. Although the concentration is low, not even 1% you'll be finding, but it would be found to be distributed in all the districts of India. Main reason is the case of migration diffusion. It is spread through migration diffusion. Okay? So you can understand, Sikh population is something वो सभी जगह मिलता है. Wherever you go, even in Ladakh, you'll find they will be present. Even if you go Russia, even if you go countries, Uzbekistan, anywhere, you'll be finding they will be present. हर जगह मिल जाते हैं. Main reason is their ventureful nature. ठीक है? Risk-taking behavior. It is more comparatively in Sikhism. ठीक है? Again, it is related with the religious cultures which are associated with them, the area in which they have evolved. So many factors, but that is the main factor why they are more risk-taking compared to the others. Okay? So that is basically how the religions are distributed. So now one question was asked. One question was, शायद इसमें होगा. This question number 5. Religious minorities are largely concentrated in the border states of India. Discuss its causes and consequences. Now you will be able to do that. This is how you had to do. So you will be talking about with each of the areas एक map बना देंगे. उस map में अलग अलग color use करना चाहते हो तो कर सकते हो, और different shades. You can talk about where the minority religions are basically concentrated. You will show in that map. And again then you will talk about the causes of this concentration. देखा हमने Buddhism में क्या causes थे? We saw what was the causes in Christianity. What was the causes if you talk about Jainism? What was the causes related with Islam? So many of them we अभी हमने देखा. ठीक है? Punjab for example is Sikhism. It is again what? Border region. Why it is located there? Because it evolved there. There was evolution there. ठीक है? So again, you can explain that, and consequences you can understand. What are the basic consequences? Number of consequences are there. One important aspect of the border areas is, border areas are characterized by difficult terrain plus relative geographical isolation. Relative geographical isolation. You combine these with cultural variability. You combine this with cultural variability and it gives rise to distinct ethnicity. Distinct ethnicity. Now you combine this distinct ethnicity with this policy was started in the British period, and this policy was the policy of you can say मेरा दिमाग बिल्कुल बंद हो चुका है, रुको लिखता हूँ, आ जाएगा. Policy of differential development. Policy of differential development. So Britishers, what they did, they developed certain areas and they left other areas simply underdeveloped. So it has this policy of differential development. You tell me, can I say we have also followed after independence? Some areas we have more developed, some areas have been left underdeveloped. So this ultimately gives rise to a phenomena which we call it as the regionalism. Regionalism, and even sometimes the problem is acute, it gives rise to separatism. Regionalism and separatism. Now you combine this regionalism and separatism with influence of outside powers. Influence and support of outside powers. It ultimately culminates into problems like terrorism. Okay? So this is how the problem, this is the main consequence. Thus what happens to overcome this problem? India has to overtake what? Lots of financial burden in developing these areas. For example, if you talk about India, India provides lots of financial support. Several backward region grants, bigger grants are given in these areas. Per capita subsidy given is very high. This is the reason you will be finding states like Jammu and Kashmir are among the medium income category states. So mainly it is because the per capita income subsidy which is given is quite high. That is why they come under this medium category states. Okay? So again, there is lots of burden to the exchequer. So many problems arise because of